Welcome back. The latest expansion to MAiD would see it open up as an option for those with mental illnesses as a sole condition. And though Parliament hit the pause button on initial plans for a rollout in 2023, the country continues to debate the expansion of its law to include mental illness starting in 2024. It's a contentious concept for which we turn back to our panel to discuss. And Dr. Simpson, I'll begin with you. In jurisdictions where we've seen it legalized, we've seen the numbers go up. Have we considered the implications of what it would mean or what access would mean for our numbers?
It's very hard to extrapolate from the Benelux countries, from Belgium and the Netherlands, where this exists now, because their monitoring systems are much tighter than Canada's, and their rate of increase in utilisation has been much slower and more progressive.
So what is your position then on the legalization of?
My own view has been throughout, and I've been involved in this debates around the policy structure and the ethics around this, and have performed capacity assessments for MAiD. I've been very clear from the outset that the extension out of end-of-life care, where it is assistance in dying, into what is clearly assisted suicide, is wrong. And I've touched on some of those reasons. Wrong, particularly as a medical procedure. It may not be wrong at a societal level for us to think it is okay for people to have assistance in suicide. But the task of killing our patients isn't part of the medical craft of healing. Because we have the technology to do it, doesn't make it right that we do it. And there are many areas in life where that is so. But there is no other treatment in medicine where the only aim of the treatment is to kill the patient. Although that may be respectful of the individual wish of the patient at the time, it changes how medicine's perceived. It changes how we look at people who are suffering. It changes how we look at and value older people or people with disability in our societies. And that is not a thing around the individual autonomy of the person, but it does change us as people and as a society, and we need to be pretty thoughtful about how we go about that. Specifically in mental health, we have run for many years as countries anti-suicide policies, suicide reduction policies. We've even had prominent agencies saying there should be zero suicide at the same time as we're bringing in legalized assisted suicide. So suicide prevention policies would pretty well collapse if MAiD for mental illness came in. And have we really got our heads around that as a society? Is that a message that we want to give to young people struggling with mental health problems? We need to be really thoughtful about that.
Helen, I'll get you to respond to this one because I know Dying with Dignity is supportive of this.
Mm-hmm. I think, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't comment in the same way, but I think we hear from people who have a long-standing history, decades of experience, who've undergone every treatment, tried every medication, done everything they can. Their suffering is irremediable. They're not able to find relief. They're not able to live a life that is relieved of suffering and a life that they want to continue living. Why should they be denied the same right that everyone else has to apply for assisted dying? They don't lack capacity necessarily, like anyone who was applying would have to have capacity, and that's assessed for. From that perspective, I think the stories are quite, they're disturbing that people can be forced to continue to live like that and be forced to consider suicide in a much more violent, destructive way because they have no other options after, decades.
But there are people where the treatment is difficult. There are people who get better. And to basically pass this as a cost-efficient measure, especially, which is what some are calling it, removes not only the medicine's obligation to protect life, but society's duty to provide what we need when we need it to make the best life possible in the circumstances.
Dr. Simpson, can we say definitively that there are some mental illnesses that are irremediable?
No. There are, we know at the end of it, looking back, that course was irremediable for this person. But there is no expert evidence. Predicting irremediability cannot be done in an expert way in mental health. So it will come down to the individual decisions of the individual practitioners, because there isn't, unlike cancer prognosis and things of that sort, you cannot prognosticate in the same way. There are some people who suffer grievously in a long-term way with mental illness, that you may look at it in that way in retrospect, but prospectively, across all of mental illness, no, you can't do it.
I want to quite deal directly with an individual I know personally. His name was Bert. Bert was a big, strong, strapping man of about 35 years of age. He had served in our first group of people in Afghanistan. He came back from Afghanistan, this big, strong, strapping individual, having served our country and trying to help the people in Afghanistan, and he had what we call generally PTSD. What it boiled down to, this big, strong, healthy guy, was he couldn't sleep at night. His nightmares would take over. He couldn't sleep during the day because he had to deal with this kind of stuff. Where was veterans on this thing? God only knows. Where were the psychiatrists on helping Bert? God only knows. How did he survive? He worked at night on a night shift, walking around the parking lot as a security guard. He had no reason to live. He didn't want to live. He had suffered, and he was suffering any day. Should we shove Bert aside? Say, Bert, you don't matter here. We haven't figured it out yet.
And I say we treat Bert, we recognize his suffering, and we get him the care he needs, rather than just assuming that the easy way out is basically to give him an injection.
Because now MAiD is being used as an alternative for healthcare.
But this also opens up, your question also opens up an audit, which we've not talked about, of what is the infrastructure even given MAiD. Who are the people that are consenting to this? Who are the experts that are determining that? And is that quality always there, and does that deserve auditing? So anecdotally, we have the story of a Paralympic athlete that was advised to commit suicide because she was tired of waiting for a ramp for her wheelchair into her home. We have 4 people in Veterans Affairs who complained about having been advised to undergo MAiD, where they didn't really want to, but the social worker from DOD, Department of Defense of Canada, Veterans Affairs, said, oh, well, you can always use MAiD, and that person's been let go. But we need to, if we're going to go down this road, we need to be equally vigilant as to who are the experts that are signing off on this.
All right, quick break. We'll get to some of your questions next.